A family in British Columbia is mourning the loss of a daughter, and thousands of people are responding to her heartbreaking message about bullying. Amanda Todd told the world her story using flashcards in an online video that's now gone viral. About a month later, she committed suicide. The RCMP is now investigating, and what happened to Amanda has sparked new talk about bullying, depression, teen suicide, and how to prevent it. Carol Glot is a depression researcher and sits on the board for Families for Depression Awareness. That's an organization that helps families recognize and cope with depressive disorders. And she joins us now from Boston. So, Carol Glot, we keep hearing so much about teen depression. Why is this becoming more and more of an issue?
I think there are several reasons, Nancy, why it's becoming more of an issue. First of all, it's a very common problem. Second of all, there's been a fair amount of stigma associated with mental illness, of which depression is one. And in particular, teenagers may not disclose all of the symptoms or may not be aware of them sometimes themselves.
So help us understand the distinction between, say, clinical depression and anxiety associated to circumstances that someone is being subjected to and puts them into a tailspin.
Well, depression is a disorder. I think that's one of the first things that everyone needs to recognize. And it's characterized by a group of symptoms, and they tend to last at least 2 weeks or longer. So it's not just a passing mood. It's not just a set of things that may happen in the course of a day, but more persistent and more pervasive. And there are a group of symptoms that we look for.
Just so you know, of course, we're focused on this because yet another story of a young girl's suicide, where after she had done this online video about bullying, and I think that has so many people, friends, parents, teachers, all wanting to understand, all wanting to try and prevent other people from being driven to despair. Let's start with, how do you differentiate between, as you talk about moods, adolescent dysfunction or struggles and depression?
Well, in teenagers, we sometimes think, well, they're just being moody or they're just being a little irritable. But in adolescent depression, we really look for a sustained mood problem. It may be sadness, or it may be more irritable, cranky, grouchy, and it may be up and down. It may be irritable one moment and sadness the next, and it's there persistently. We also look for that with a group of other symptoms: changes in sleep, changes in appetite, changes in energy, if they're a real slug, if they don't want to be with their friends. Some difficulty in school performance may go along with this as well. And then tragically, like in the case that spurred some of this, thoughts of death or even suicide. When we see this cluster of symptoms, when we see it being more pervasive, so for at least 2 weeks, and particularly when it gets to the point of someone is thinking about hurting themselves or thinking about death or wishing they were dead, we need to take it very seriously, and that's really one of the main tipping points.
And how different are the symptoms for teens versus adults?
Well, they're similar in some ways, but for teenagers, again, the mood differentiator may be more in the irritability, cranky side rather than more typical sad, down, depressed. Both can be there, but in terms of adolescence, we may see more of that irritability, and we may see it more as moodiness. The danger is sometimes people say, oh, well, they're just a teenager, they're just being moody.
Right.
When we see these other symptoms, when we hear, unfortunately, that they might be thinking about death, that should get everyone a little bit more aware of, oh, this could be a serious problem. This isn't just a teenage day-to-day struggle. This is something that we need to get checked out more.
And in your experience, we know that the internet is a big part of these tragedies, these stories. In your view, is the internet part of the problem or part of the solution?
Well, in some ways it's both, and in some ways it's neither. One of the things that's also key to teenage depression, and this is part of what I see in my practice and my research here at Salem State University and McLean Hospital, is one of the things that we know is that this is really destructive sometimes for people, particularly when it relates to social relationships. So the internet has just magnified the effect of the social connections and social networks. When a teenager has a breakup, when they're bullied, when they lose their network of friends, it could be a whole set of things. I think with our speed of connections and the social connections that can occur, it's one more potential trigger that can be a factor in someone's depression.
Carol Glot, I really appreciate you sharing your insights with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.